What is happening in the Jedi community right now feels very reminiscent to what was once the Lolita fashion community. Lolita fashion community, subculture, whatever you want to call it, has been infamous for being a very toxic and horrible environment. All of it in the guise of, I just want you to do better. I just want you to be a better Lolita. I just want you to court better. Gatekeeping was rampant. Lolitas were mean girls. And to this day, people say this about Lolita fashion. And I will be that person to tell you some of Lolita's fashion mean girl behavior and kind of compare it to what's going on and happening in the Jedi community. It's a lot about racism, it's a lot about fat phobia, and it's a lot about mean girl behavior that is just absolutely disgusting. And just kind of talk about gatekeeping overall. I hope this is interesting, and again, if you have commentary on this, or you were there, or you're part of one of these communities and you would like to give me your insight, feel free to do so. I am just one person, so I will appreciate additional information. So let's get started. The early 2000s and 2010s, oh boy, that was a time for the Lolita fashion community. Now, mind you, I'm specifically referring to the Western community. This is extremely important because there was a major divide between the Japanese and the Western communities, which is funny considering how obsessed the Western community was with upholding what they thought rules were of their fashion style. Just so you guys know, my opinions on rules in Jfashion spaces. I believe that it is kind of mislabeled. I think that rules are just guidelines, because we do need some level of guidelines to know what is and what isn't a Jfashion subculture. For example, Lolita fashion, the one that I am a part of and love so much, definitely has guidelines surrounding the silhouette. A lot of it is like A-line petticoat or just the bell shape, you know, those are very iconic shapes of Lolita fashion. There's obviously exceptions, specifically you see this in Arrow Lolita, but primarily you will recognize a Lolita court by how it's shaped. But also, I believe that the way you court is also very unique to Lolita fashion. So, if you're a beginner and you can't do all of these things yet, don't feel bad, there's nothing wrong with that, but I do think that for an entire Lolita court, there's going to be a headpiece, there's going to be something on your wrist, maybe something on your, little fingies, maybe a blouse, maybe the shape, the JSK, the OP, whatever you got, some frilly socks, and some cute shoes. Again, there will always be exceptions, some people cannot wear tea parties, some people really don't like the feeling of having something on their wrist, some people don't like having something on their head. In the end of the day, you make Lolita fit whatever makes you happy, whatever accommodates your needs, and there's nothing wrong with wearing sneakers in your Lolita court. Again, there's lifestyle Lolitas, obviously, There are guidelines for a reason that make the fashion the fashion. If you want to break some of these, that doesn't necessarily make you a bad person, but at some point we can all agree that something is no longer Lolita fashion style, I guess, Like, if you break enough rules, eventually it will no longer be Lolita, and more so inspired, perhaps. And that's okay too, because Lolita fashion, or Gyaru, or Jiraikei is more than just a fashion style. A lot of it comes with a moral system. So, for example, Lolita fashion is rooted in feminist history, especially in Japan. It was a movement, to kind of rebel against, I guess, entering womanhood too quickly and, being forced to marry some man. It was like trying to keep some of that innocence and keep some of that, I don't know, frill, that fantasy, all of these things. And that is definitely a big part, in my opinion, of Lolita fashion. A lot of people will also say that the modesty aspect is very important to them, which is why there are requirements for specific skirt lengths, or maybe the, blouse under this JSK or whatever. But I also want to recognize that these rules and guidelines have changed over time, and what we are considering Lolita now might change in the future. And that doesn't necessarily have to do with Westerners tainting it with their Westernness, but simply because fashion changes over time, and that is just how things are. If you compare how Baby the Sasha and Bride courts today versus how they used to court, there's a significant difference. I mean, nowadays we see courts far more often than not with socks that are not reaching over the knee, or even blouseless courts. That is something that was unimaginable, especially especially to the Western mind back in the day. The brands specifically will change over time too. Sometimes they will have the OTT suite era. Right now, they're doing whatever they're doing now. And again, it changes, it fluctuates, it does whatever it wants. In the end of the day, that is out of our control. The only thing we can control is how we personally like to court. But what exactly do I mean by Lolita fashions having been the mean girls, and why am I comparing it to Jedi K communities today? Lolita's had a very huge community back in the day on LiveJournal. And as you can imagine, having a dedicated group of people all in one place can create some not so great environments. It can also be awesome, but back in the day, it really wasn't for all of the people. I get a lot of DMs more often than not of people telling me that they wish they could have joined the Lolita fashion community, but they got shunned so hard for their cores that it made them terrified to ever join the fashion style again. There were a lot of mean girls back in the day, despite our feminist history of Lolita fashion. The feminism and girls supporting girls, or, you know, people supporting people, wasn't really present, to say the least. We had rampant racism and normalized fat phobia, normalized ableism in this community, shaming people for being plus sized, shaming people for having a preference in courting, in makeup, and also just having disability aids, which is absolutely fucking insane. And if you still don't believe me, there were specific insults coined to insult those types of people. And of course, one is the infamous that we all know, which is obviously Ida, actually just referred to as a terrible cord. You look costumey, you look wrong, you did it wrong, it looks horrible. The worst thing that could ever happen is being an Ida. Additionally, we also have the term lace monster. This one right here refers to as a dress, a cord that just has too much lace going on, which apparently is a bad thing in my own mind. I love lace. I want more lace everywhere. I love lace. But a lot of people, especially back in the day, said that it was just too costumey. It looked too cheap. Then the next one, again, that just goes back to the fat phobia. There was literally a term called fatty chan. Yes, Fatty Chan. Basically just insulted plus-sized Lolitas and just called them fat. So that's awesome. Thanks for that. I did a bit more digging and found this like really crazy post on LiveJournal from 2014 that a Lolita apparently had eggs thrown at her because of her dress, so that was absolutely crazy. But I also want to highlight that not everybody was being a bully. In fact, I've seen a lot of posts actually trying to call out this behavior, but whether or not this was met with a lot of compassion is one thing. But I'm still bringing this up to show you guys that not everyone was being a horrible person, and some people actually did try to make this community a bit more of a welcoming space. But unfortunately, a lot of this advice is just kind of, yeah, well, you kind of have to deal with it, whatever. But regardless, I still think that it's important to include, because again, not everyone was horrible. Some people were actually saying, hey guys, let's maybe not be mean girls, but yeah, just kind of something to include in this discussion. And as you can probably imagine, many Lolitas that wanted to enter the communities felt absolutely not welcomed. They were terrified to do something wrong, terrified of being criticized for their looks, being criticized for anything, really. I mean, there were many Lolitas that were shamed for their hair texture, for their skin color, for their size, for their age. You really had to be the most conventionally attractive person ever, and also had the budget and the resources to know where to get things from, because again, we're talking about the early 2000s and 2010s here. People also might say that this is a primarily online issue. This was just online, this was just online, this was just online, this is just online. And to some degree, yeah, but also not really. This really depends on people's own personal experience. I 100% know that online spaces were very toxic. Again, you can hide behind your own profile, feel superior to this other person, you know, especially if it's a newbie. This brings us to the topic of behind the bows. For every veteran Lolita, they just shivered and got war flashbacks, and I fully understand. Now, this archive goes back to about 2013, and essentially what this is, it allows everyone to submit anonymous pictures with their own little text on it, and as you can see, a lot of it was just straight up bullying. Some of it was also just regular shitposts or complaining about prices, but a lot of it, I'm saying A lot of it was just normalizing fat phobia, racism, or just being straight up rude. Now, some of them did rebel against it, which I actually did appreciate scrolling through all these submissions, but again, a lot of it was just anonymous shitposting. And this is the first thing that I was thinking about when I saw this Jedi Kaxing trend. A lot of people said it's just shitposting, it is just rage bait, but honestly, this was the original rage bait for Lolita. It was the place to hide behind an anonymous posting and just shitpost anyone and everyone. This just goes to show that this level of toxicity has always existed and isn't unique to TikTok at all, but I do have to say that the key difference here is that on TikTok, they're actually showing the photos and videos of people without censoring anybody's faces. Also, if you really think about it, TikTok has a much greater potential of gaining virality and also having random people be introduced to bullying this random person or these random people. And while yes, Behind the Bows at its peak had a lot of comments and a lot of people and a lot of traction, it wasn't as big as all of these TikTok videos with like hundreds of thousands of views. Like, this was very much a more isolated incident. Now, I understand if you see a court that you don't really like, or maybe they made some mistakes, maybe it doesn't look like Lolita, maybe they got a dress from Amazon, or whatever your nitpicky ass sees in this picture, and trust me, I do too. I'm no saint. I see courts that I'm like, that could have probably been improved upon. I'm not gonna insult them for it, because chances are they don't even know any better yet. I don't think there was a lot of compassion for newbies that were just, again, new, possibly teenagers, preteens, you know, that kind of thing. Being very rude and having that be your first experience in a subculture is very hurtful. If the first time I went to a Lolita meetup or the first time I posted a picture of me online and it was met with a lot of people hating on me, criticizing me, and not even being positive about it, I think that would make me quit and never start again. And I think this was a lot of people's experience and still is, specifically, again, as I mentioned, in the Jedi community. On TikTok specifically, which unfortunately has become a cesspool for toxicity. Now, why do I have any business talking about Jedi? Well, I do really like Jedi. I am a thorough enjoyer of the fashion style, and I do think they have some banger chords and some very beautiful dresses. Like, hello, those sets are stunning. But at the same time, I have seen a recent trend of people just being extremely fucking toxic in other people's comment section. Now, this then spiraled into Jedi Kaxing. Now, what the fuck is Jedi Kaxing? Jedi Kaxing is, I think, a rage-baiting bullshit that preteens and teenagers have been doing. Essentially just people taking other individuals' TikTok videos, who are usually minors, may I say, and just combining them in a video and just essentially calling them ugly. I think a lot of people like attention, whether or not it is negative attention doesn't really matter to them. If a young person gets put in a video like this, chances are they will never touch the subculture again. And a lot of really toxic people might say, good, so what? Another poser out of the fashion style. May I tell you that you also were a beginner at some point? You know, like, especially when you are enjoying a fashion for the first time in your, like, I don't know, 12 or 11. Guess what? You're probably not going to have all the resources yet. You think back and have some maybe empathy for people that are just starting out, because I remember when I did, I was rocking my Amazon dress, okay? And I was rocking this pink and blue dress with a black undershirt and black tights because I didn't have anything else. And guess what? That shit was Ida as fuck. Yeah, that shit was Ida as fuck. But instead of ridiculing me for the first time, you know, when I was entering the Lolita fashion space and went to a physical meetup, I was met with very nice, concrete advice and resources where to get proper Lolita items. This encouraged me, because I had a positive experience, to learn and develop my own style within the fashion style. You people, whether it is a joke to you or not that deep to you, doing these fuck-ass compilations of ridiculing minors and young people, and again, whether that is rage bait or not, I really don't care, because to the person being posted, it is not just rage bait. It is potentially ruining them. Like, this is bullying. I think we're forgetting that, yes, on the internet, you know, you post something, you don't know where this is gonna go. I know. But also, a lot of minors just want community. A lot of these beginners just want to feel included. They want to find their people. Most likely, they don't have anyone around them. They just want a space to interact with others and not expect to be in some compilation. And then also adding all these terrible images of these poorly drawn caricatures of just people that are the bad Jedi-Ks. And this, again, reminds me so much of the Lolita community, because we also had images like this, comparing Edas to non-Edas, and how you can improve your chords. Again, it wasn't called Lolita maxing back in the day, but I'm so sure if that existed back then, we probably would have had a similar trend going on. I know it can be very hard when you are a veteran Lolita and seeing people make simple mistakes or avoidable mistakes in your mind. You're like, oh my god, how are you so stupid? Like, oh my god, this and that. And trust me, I get frustrated too sometimes. I'm like, in this day and age where the information is everywhere, how can you still not know where to get items, right? But then I'm thinking about it for 2 more seconds, and I think about how it was when I was 11 or 12 and I was really shy and I was terrified of making mistakes. So I think it is really unfair to judge people like this. Again, you can tell people, obviously, be like, hey, you know, I noticed your cord is from Shein or something like that. And it's like, that's not really what we do. Like, you know, we buy here and there, and I know it's maybe out of your budget, but you can also try secondhand resources, blah, 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 right? Give them some material to work with, right? In the end of the day, especially minors have limits that us adults don't have. I remember my mom being extremely unwilling at first to order from any site that she wasn't familiar with. And I think a lot of parents, even though it is 2025, still feel this way. It is an unfamiliar site that potentially might use translation, so the English isn't very good, or maybe the other languages, you know, or maybe the shipping fees are really high. So your mom is like, why do you want to order there when we can order from Shein? Like, again, especially if it's a minor, you have to think differently. You cannot judge them on the same standard that you judge an adult that is entering this subculture space, you know? And again, whether or not these Jedi trends are rage bait, I still see people in other people's comment section ridiculing them, telling them that they're ugly, telling them that they should use more filters, telling them that they should cut their bangs, telling them that they should change this and change that and do this and do that. And again, to some degree, I understand, right? But at the same time, if your rules include being more white and having a different hair texture, that feels very fucking racist to me. And I know that the Jedi community has a very, very big and large group of people on Twitter, but I don't use Twitter for obvious reasons. But here are some things that I found on Reddit that kind of gave me a very icky feeling, and a few snippets that I did get off of Google, Twitter, just kind of screenshots. And it just showcases that, yes, some people genuinely believe that you have to have pigtails in order to be a true Jedi. You have to have a certain hair length, a certain hair color, which is just bullshit. Like, please, guys, come on. Let's be so for real right now. And also glamorizing self-harm and things like that, which I know there's a difference between being Jedi and wearing Jedi clothing. But let's be for real. You can wear the fashion even if you don't have an eating disorder, or even if you are trying to recover. Like, come on. It doesn't stop you from being or fitting the Jedi standard. It doesn't change the fact that it's still going to be a Jedi cord. I just think it is more problematic to judge somebody based on skin color and basically tell them to use more filters. But I understand that the Jedi community and also the aesthetic is very heavily filtering yourself and all these things, and I also know that there's a lot of mentally unwell people in these spaces that is just fostering more negativity. But at the same time, this is no excuse to start being a hateful group of people that are bullying others simply because they're not meeting some weird beauty standard. At the end of the day, a lot of the criticism that I see is that they're not pretty enough, and not actual criticisms on their coordinate. Because again, I understand wanting to get the coordinate right and wanting the fashion to maintain, you know, what the fashion is. I totally get that. But a lot of y'all are not focusing on the real issue. There is a fine line between protecting or wanting to hold on to what the fashion and subculture is about and maintaining its origins and, you know, beliefs, values, all these things. But it is an entirely different thing to introduce weird beauty standards to a fashion style or subculture where really it has nothing or barely anything to do with it. It's fascinating how a lot of newer people that are joining these subcultures want to introduce more appealing looks to it. That if you don't look conventionally attractive and you don't do your makeup like this, or you don't do your makeup like that, or you do your hair like this, you do your hair like that, that you're all of a sudden not fitting it anymore. Like, the amount of times I've heard that my makeup style isn't right for Lolita fashion is obscene. Like, I am sick and tired of hearing it, because guess what? Lolita fashion has nowhere any rules regarding makeup. Yes, in the Gothic and Lolita Bibles, there's a few, makeup tutorials, and all of them are very soft. But, like, have you seen Mana-sama? Have you seen anything in regarding VK? Like, have you seen how they do their makeup? Have you seen how they promote their albums and how they're dressed and all of these things? Do you really think that any of them give a shit about me doing my makeup like this? No. And yes, it is more common to see Lolitas wearing, maybe no makeup or more, simplified makeup. I'm actually quite grateful that some of these stricter rules are no longer as enforced. If you really logically think about it, a little bit of self-expression is not gonna hurt the subculture. I will never be mad at a Lolita who wears no blouse in a very warm climate, or if they simply cannot handle it. Like, that is not something that personally affects me or the subculture at all. Lolitas in Japan have done this for decades now, so it's really not that big of a deal, man. I genuinely think that a lot of people in the West are really scared that the more people, especially younger or newer people, join, that the fashion gets watered down, that it loses its roots. And I understand, especially on TikTok, there's a valid fear of something being aestheticized and losing its meaning completely. Now, let me explain. Some people have a fear of posers entering subcultures, Jfashion communities, simply because they want to make it a trend or something like that, right? Like, they don't actually care about the values, they don't actually care about anything. They just, want to take some parts of the fashion and run with it and don't even care about courting it right or doing it right or whatever. And to some people, they say, it's just fashion, who cares? A lot of people do. And I'm one of them. I care a lot about my fashion style. I saw this a lot with goth subcultures, for example. That's why all of a sudden we had the existence of conservative goth or conservative punks, or music actually shouldn't be political at all. And all of a sudden all these, subcultures that had very deep political meaning as well, and just in general societal meaning, and had core values and things like that, all of a sudden kind of lost it a little bit. And I think that is a big fear of a lot of people in their subcultures, that will happen with theirs as well. And all of a sudden, fast fashion will, jump on this bandwagon, and people will completely misinterpret something that they care so deeply about. You need to find a good balance between upholding some of the rules and core beliefs and values of a fashion style, but also allowing for new fashion trends to hit, and also making sure that newbies feel welcomed in this space without having so much bullying in these communities. A few thoughts that I had. Again, I hope you liked it. I know this was a very ranty videos, but which one of my videos isn't very ranty? So let's be for real. Again, follow me on all my social medias. I'm live on Twitch all the time, so follow me there. And yeah, I'll be back for another one soon. Bye!